Did Putin just admit that Russia is ready to negotiate? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. It's November 23rd, 2023. This is your daily Ukraine update. Let's get into it. Okay, first we always got to take a look at the changes to the battlefield, since that's always probably the most significant. And again, to me, the significance is that Russia, its efforts to stage a significant breakthrough kind of have fizzled. We saw some significant movement here near Andriivka, but you can see here that it looks like, at least in a few minor ways, particularly in this corner here, the Russian offensive effort has kind of stalled out. We also look to the south near Avdiivka, sorry. You can see that, again, Russian forces making just literally 100 meters of gain, perhaps, into this dense wooded area near the city. Again, at this rate of advance, they're just a few hundred years from being able to take the city of Avdiivka. You can see here, too, near Stepova, they're making marginal gains. This is, again, like, Stepova isn't really a stepping stone to anywhere. You know, it could open up them to push at this Berdichi, Semenivka, but this isn't going to facilitate an encirclement of Avdiivka. There's too much territory here that they're not pinching. They need to pinch the town off. And when we zoom in, I mean, just look at how, even if they took Stepova, just look at how many different routes into and out of the Ukrainian-controlled territory continue to exist. And as we saw in Bakhmut, if there's not already a cleared route, the Ukrainian forces can also just make one. Plowing some of these fields, using mine clears to create alternative routes. So, you know, the defense of Bakhmut, right, ended up becoming a single roadway, but they're so far off from this. Even if they took these other towns, it's not really clear that it would facilitate a Russian encirclement of Ukrainian forces in Avdiivka. So, again, you've also got some minor updates in a couple of other regions. You can see here in Shumy, like we talked about yesterday, this seems to be where Ukrainian forces are driving Russians back. This is actually territory, while it doesn't really have any major significance, it's mostly symbolic. It is territory that was last held by Ukrainian forces in 2014. So a sign that at least Ukrainian forces are moving to liberate previously restricted territory. Looking over at the combat map, you can see Russian forces, of course, looking for that sort of sustainable operational pace. 58 combat engagements, but look at the concentration, heavily concentrated in this region around Kupiansk, as well as in and around Avdiivka. And that's pretty much it. Everything else looks like minor fixing operations. So it's possible Russia is starting to become a little more disciplined and focused with where it deploys its forces in at least on offensives. But again, it also needs to fix Ukrainian forces in place, and they need to be able to do that as well. The other thing that's noteworthy, this is from Twitter. So again, from Chuck Farr, a Twitter account. So take it with a grain of salt. But this does depict, or appear to depict, Ukrainian forces continuing to make some minor advancements in and around the towns of Poima, Prishaniv, Krinky, particularly these two towns here, where it looks like there might be some intact crossings that they're able to utilize now that they have these footholds. What's also interesting is that it looks like Ukrainian forces are striking deeper into Russian-held territory, trying to disrupt Russian artillery, headquarters, command and control, and logistics. So by degrading these, it's going to make it easier again to drive the Russians out of these set of towns here. Is this the preparation for a major breakthrough? I don't think so, and I don't think Ukraine has been pretty straightforward. They're not gunning for a huge breakthrough. If you want to see some of the fighting from across the river here, as well as in Avdiivka, you want to check us out at combatvetnews.com. Those that are already members know the deal. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I find the week's most viral combat footage from Gaza, from Ukraine, and we do a deep dive analysis, understanding the tactics, weapons, units, locations involved in this conflict. So if you're interested, it's the best way to support the channel. You guys know YouTube has been getting stricter and stricter with monetization requirements. It's almost preposterous at this point. So I depend on you guys for keeping me and the team able to do this every single day. It's literally Thanksgiving Day here in the US. So again, I'm out here on my grind for y'all. So any one of these tiers will get you access to those videos. Okay, let's talk about what I thought was most interesting. And this, first off, we'll take a look at the news story. Putin in a meeting of the G20 summit, these are the 20 largest economies in the world, says that we must think of how to stop, quote, the tragedy of war in Ukraine. And just a recognition by Putin that this war is tragic and needs to be stopped. Again, this is the second time we've had a Kremlin-affiliated person, literally Putin himself, acknowledge the need to achieve a level of peace. Expressing willingness to participate in peace talks is an essential first step. And while this is a long way from an admission that the war has been a disaster for Russia, or that Russia can't do these sort of things, or that Russia is at fault, or that Russia needs to give back some of Ukraine's territory, or all of it, it certainly is a sign that Russia's realized that they don't believe that continued fighting is going to produce massive changes to the battlefield status quo, that they've won as much as they're likely to win, and that Putin needs a way out, right? Of course, Putin defended Russia's actions in the next breath. I'm talking about a coup in Ukraine and rewriting history by saying the Kiev regime started the war in Donbass. And he tried to link the idea that after the revolution, Kiev's forces trying to repel Donbass separatists was somehow analogous to Israel's treatment of Palestinians, which is just really, it's disrespectful to the Palestinians. Even if you're a pretty neutral party in that conflict, the people in the Donbass had Ukrainian passports. They could move anywhere they wanted into and out of the Donbass. Just drawing the analogy is absolutely eye-wateringly stupid. But of course, Putin is talking his book. He knows that he wants to try. He knows that his international support overlaps heavily with that Palestine, anti-Western, anti-imperialist, anti-NATO. So he's trying to align those causes to sort of steal some of the sheen, so to speak, of that ideology. So I think this is a fascinating breakdown, a fascinating admission by Putin, and a sign of potentially good things to come. Now, I want to point out that the Institute for the Study of War is calling this false rhetoric, saying that Russia isn't really looking to engage in meaningful negotiations, and it's trying to pressure the West to prematurely push Ukraine to negotiate with Russia. Putin stated, the full quote is, quote, the world must, quote, think about how to stop this tragedy, falsely signaling a willingness to engage in meaningful peace negotiations. I don't think that's true necessarily. Putin and other Russian officials, they say it's falsely claimed that the Kremlin is ready to negotiate with war, but the Kremlin maintains its maximalist objectives, including territorial claims and regime change. That's probably true, but again, you have to read between the lines on this, right? You know, it's a far cry from there is no negotiation to not only does there have to be negotiation, but the war needs to end. That's a huge admission from Putin. When the warmonger says the war needs to end, that's real progress. And, you know, when you're an authoritarian country, obviously it takes a massive level of devastation to get them to admit that. But it's telling that Putin is finally at that point. Again, this isn't like the war's not ended next week. The war's not ending next month. The war's probably not ending there's a small chance, I would say, that it would end late next year. We're a long way from an actual peace deal, but this is how it starts. Anyway, guys, that's all I had. Thank you to the Colonel tier members of Combat Vet News. Thanks to our Lieutenant tier members. I really couldn't do this without you guys. Hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you over on combatvetnews.com. See ya.